my left and the audience right.
Walter Bush.
Brian Mann.
Carol King.
Dallas Hanbury.
Thank you very much. We're improvising this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. To our other commissioners, you have a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. The chair will now entertain a motion for the adoption of those minutes. It's been moved, and is there a second? Second. Been moved and properly second. Is there any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried. Thank you very much. And we'd just like to say good afternoon to everybody. And we will begin with our agenda as printed. And we will start with the revamping of the Historic Signs Program report. Our working committee, Cindy Keeping, Carol King, and we'll start with that. And I'll pass the microphone on to Ms. Carol King.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. We're looking, we're pricing different signs locally, trying to come up with something that will be, economical for the different folks in the historic districts. We do have a guest with us tonight who would like to comment from a historic district. This is Charlie Colvin from Cloverdale, Idlewild.
From the CIA. The Cloverdale Idlewild Association, and I'm really not prepared to make a presentation or anything, but we were talking earlier about when I looked at the agenda, and I haven't seen the artwork that was presented at the last meeting. I came because I'm now on the Landmarks Board of Directors, and they're byward, and their whole mission is historic preservation, and so I thought, well, I better get smarter about the historic preservation business and the committee here and what goes on. The signs, I have some personal thoughts on the historic signs that people buy. And my first thought is that they're popular. People do want signs if their homes qualify, and they apply for them because you see them fairly often, and people at neighborhood meetings ask, how do I get one, and that. So I think there's a place for signs of that nature. My personal view, and I can't speak yet for the CIA, but I will take this to the CIA meeting, which is at 7 o'clock tonight, and see if I can't get some feedback for you on that very issue, on the signs themselves. But the signs are really big. My view is that we could do something that would be tasteful, that would be smaller, and that would capture, even from the street, that would show that the house has designation as historic. I don't have any, I'm not a designer, so I don't have any particular design in mind at this point, but like I said, I will present this to the CIA this evening and see if they have any thoughts. But I think it should be smaller, and I think it could be less, I'm going to use the word busy. The sign that we have has a lot on it. I don't think it actually replicates what we have over at Landmarks, but it's very close, very similar. As I understand it, they were both designed by the same fellow. So at this point, those are the only thoughts I have. But I will take the notion to the CIA meeting this evening, see if I can get you some feedback, and I can email that to Carol, or I can email it to Dr. Bailey to give you that feedback fairly quickly, see what they say tonight.
Okay. Anyone has a question?
Yeah, well, I was just going to comment with you, Charlie, in that part of our process was what we're doing now is price shopping and design shopping. We've had, one good design to look at, but and then the next process was, to sort of to come up with an alternative. In other words, we've heard positive and negatives, but we really wanted to get back into the neighborhoods to see exactly what they wanted, because they're going to be the market. What do you think about the price point? I think currently it's what, $45 to $50?
It's $40,
Yeah, so
which was our cost.
So that's what that particular sign, do you think, well, and this is something you can ask CIA, you know, we've had a lot of discussion about that. Anything that has sign-wise, other materials, textured signs, they tend to run a little bit more. That's also why we were trying to get things done locally. It's kind of a hard thing to do first out because we're going to have to make some kind of a commitment, you know, to a printer to get the template done and to get, you know, the material that we decide on. So I really appreciate you talking to them tonight, and then we will follow up with them. We have also guidelines that we're working on too. Not only is it the design part of it, but it's like who gets it, how do you get it, that kind of thing, that fall within the HPC's purview also. And so we're taking comments on that. I will get you a copy of that to see what you think about it, you know, so.
Yeah, as I understand it, the guidelines, you can get your, when the water was turned on in your house, and that gives you the date, is that?
Right. Well, and that's true, but like, you know, sometimes the house is a new house that dropped in the middle of a historic neighborhood.
Yes.
That kind of thing. So there are all types of fabric within the neighborhoods, who qualifies, who doesn't. And there's a sort of a different stepped process now that Christy can kind of.
One of the things we talked about is that preservation has probably grown up to the point in Montgomery that not everybody gets a gold star. You know, they did the split of the signs you could get, historic building, historic district. If you mucked up an older house and you were in a district, you got a sign anyway because you were in the district. So part of the discussion is actually having some standards. You know, if you've remodeled your house to the point that it doesn't look like a historic house anymore, should you get a sign? Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should if you open up that closed-in porch or, you know, those sorts of things. And if they ask, why the heck are we doing this now? We have an issue with the vendor, the place we were getting the signs, we can't get them from anymore. So this was the time we thought was the opportunity to kind of rebrand, relaunch the sign program.
Okay.
So if you do happen to come across in CIA, we really haven't put a blast out for maybe some other design opportunities if you have some graphic people in your neighborhood too. We have a really nice simple one. We want it to brand Montgomery.
Right.
You know, the Historic
Right.
Preservation Commission and the historic neighborhoods in particular too. So that's sort of what we're looking at too, all the different types of significant elements and things that can be used abstractly to prove that it's us. So any input would be welcome, and I'll actually email you that our guidelines,
Okay.
tentative guidelines, you know, that the board itself is reviewing for input too.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I made a note on price point, size, and I wrote down content, which is design to bring up at the meeting tonight. Is there anything else that you want me to mention, bring up?
Sounds good.
Those would be the three things that I would ask their view on, and we'll see what they say.
That's great. Thanks.
Of course, this is a new role for the CIA, actually participating in something like this. We're a very, very active neighborhood, but it turns out that the 6 activities and events that we have, they're all parties. So we're moving away I'm moving away from social chairman to something else here, which is exciting. So thanks for having me.
And thank you.
Charlie, y'all are electing a new president tonight, right? Y'all are having elections tonight, right?
Yes.
Gonna have a new president?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure whether James will be elected.
Where's the microphone? It's on.
You're working
Yeah,
now.
it's on now. Okay.
Old Cloverdale meets on a week from tonight. I'll make sure to raise this issue with our group as well.
Okay. Let's hear from the other commissioners before we move to our next item. Are there any comments? Anyone has any question regarding our historic sign program? Okay, Ms. Carol King, would you just close us out with that, some concluding remarks?
Well, we're working along on revamping our historic sign program, looking at more designs to consider. We like the one that has been submitted to us, needs a little fine tuning, but we're also looking at a place to have them made locally. It's going to be a longer process. You know, in the long run, there could be hundreds of these signs made, so it's going to take a little bit of an economic commitment once we get the program rolling. And so we'll just keep the commission and updated and connect with the historic neighborhoods as well.
Okay, thank you so very much. Preservation Leadership Class, Dr. Dallas Hansberry and Brian Mann.
Brian, would you like to go ahead and inform the commission?
I had volunteered to contact Huntington College to see if they would be willing to provide facilities, basically a classroom for the preservation leadership class to meet. I submitted an application, visited the campus. That application was reviewed by the executive council at Huntington yesterday, and they approved our request. I received an email that says, "Good afternoon, your event was approved. Preservation leadership class from 5:30 to 7, final dates to be determined, 5 to 6 dates from March through May 2019. Classroom dates needed, the capacity needed, maximum of 35 folks." So they just say when we have dates, let them know so they can schedule the best classroom for the event. So I was excited, thought that was favorable. Hopefully they'll have us in a historic building. Hopefully, I hope they put us in Flowers Hall.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be nice.
Okay. Dr. Hansberry.
Well, no, that's fantastic, and I want to thank Brian for taking the initiative on that. So I guess going forward, Christy, we need to start reaching out to speakers so that we can start to firm up these dates.
We need to pick the day of the week we want to do it
Okay.
and back it up and see who is
Dates.
available, if people are available on those dates.
So day of the week is first.
So maybe we may need to have a powwow the week after Thanksgiving
That's a good plan.
to do that, to sit down and look at the calendar, further flesh out the topics, or decide if there's anything we need to combine or scratch, or, because that's going to impact who we ask to speak on which day. And I had another thought, and it's gone. Where'd it go?
So maybe we just send out an email the next few days and just try to find out when everybody's available so we can have this meeting.
Yeah, yeah. Because if we can
Well, I
pick
mean,
the
it's Brian
days,
and
the day of the week, and we can figure out what our topics, what I was going to suggest that we add, assuming we may change venues every year, maybe have one of those classes should touch on the historic architecture of the place we're meeting, just as kind of an
a good point.
overview of,
Right.
since you're here, you're already in a place that has,
Right.
it's collegiate Gothic architecture, and it wouldn't take a whole lot of time to talk about that.
We could either start at 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after in the spring. It'll be light later.
You know, Lois gave me a copy of Jeff Benton's book, and he has an entire write-up about Huntington in the book.
Yeah. He's got a write-up about a whole bunch of
potential
things.
speaker.
Yeah,
Seems like Huntington has an archivist.
They do. They have a staff.
Well, yes and no. I'm sure they'd be glad to speak, but I believe that he works actually for the Methodist Church.
Right. Do the
But I'm sure we can snag him.
I just know they're in the library and they have an archive of some sort.
Yeah. So then I guess we'll just get an email going tomorrow. I'll email you, Brian and Christy, and
me.
I guess we'll just email everyone, and then we can just.
No, I'm on it.
Oh.
I know. I got left off, but that's okay.
Okay.
I saw you own one thing and then it was not on here.
I know. It's on the other thing.
And
it's on the
I
minutes.
thought I added it, see, that's what I did. I
To the
added it
minutes.
to the minutes, and I forgot to put it on the agenda,
That's fine.
because I did the minutes anyway, or Paula did the minutes, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to add that, and I
Well,
forgot.
I'll email y'all
apparently.
tomorrow then, we'll get this set up.
So,
It's a good plan.
Good deal.
so
Progress.
plan is then we will just set up a day to meet the week after Thanksgiving to try to flesh out the dates so we can get back to Huntington before they all disappear for Christmas, and with those dates, and then start working through our speakers roster. Push comes to shove, if I had to, I could talk about all of it, so I would rather not.
Right.
Dr. Bailey, we've already volunteered to do the history of Montgomery, so there's one.
Right.
Good.
And then we'll just work through it and see what makes sense and
Availability for folks to decide on the
Availability.
dates.
see,
Dates
yeah.
to help them, yeah.
That it will be easier to do that with dates because
Right.
people might be like, oh yeah, that's great, and they'll be like, oh no, I'm gonna be out of town that day.
So, good plan.
Okay. One thing I'd just like to add to this discussion is that let us be mindful that we are making a contribution to historic preservation because after all, what we want to do, bottom line, is to try to get people to start thinking preservation historically and to know the alternatives to demolition. That's our main goal here. And the more people we can bring an awareness of the significance of historic preservation, the more we're doing our job. So regardless of how many activities we have, let's just keep in mind that what we are doing is bringing to the forefront a significant discussion regarding historic preservation, and that's our mission here with this organization. Yes.
And Mr. Colvin, I was going to also say, you might mention too, we'll go back into the neighborhoods are one of our major markets for this preservation leadership class, which will be an 8-week class. It's an 8-week scheduled. There'll be 6 class nights and then 2 activities where we'll study history of Montgomery architecture, city regulations, architectural styles, details, that kind of thing. So I think it's the big appeal are going to be the people who live in historic neighborhoods or work in historic buildings and may or may not be moving, or may or may not be moving in that direction too. So that's something that we've got planned for the spring, March, and April with that will dovetail up to the 2019 awards too.
We'll have a graduation at the awards program in May. So.
Okay. Any other question or comments regarding the preservation leadership class?
Brian, did you have some additional thoughts? I thought you were looking like you were going to say something a minute ago.
Oh, I was just going to add that Old Cloverdale itself, where Huntington is located, has a very interesting history, and if there is a program about Huntington, it might be appropriate to add a little bit about the neighborhood it's in.
We're going to do, one of the classes will cover kind of the history, or talk about the different, the historic districts and their histories and their unique architecture. So we will have a session that goes into more detail about, we'll start with the historic districts because there's an awful lot we could talk about Montgomery, but that's we may have to expand that. But we got to get our feet wet first. But we will talk about that.
Okay, anything else regarding preservation leadership class? All right. 2019 awards. Cindy Keepin is not here, Doug McCants is not here, and James Long is not here.
They're working on the awards program.
Okay.
They got the files, or the basic
Yeah.
format that we've been using to improve on and expand on. So they've kind of got a foundation to work for.
Okay. All right. Cindy, is there anything you have?
Well, I've got something that
I mean, Christy, I'm saying Cindy. Christy.
That's, my father-in-law
Yes.
calls me Cindy too, so it's okay. There's something that's been percolating that I'm trying to figure out exactly what the best format would be, so I could use some extra brains to kind of think on this. We are getting ready to build a porch rail on our front porch. We know it had one. We don't know exactly what it looked like. We got to guess. We're going to copy Carol's, actually, with a different pattern.
Yeah,
But-
don't use hearts, use clubs.
What?
Don't use hearts, use puppy feet.
We're
use
using
cloves.
diamonds. We've got a diamond
Diamonds
on.
are good, yeah.
We're doing we have a diamond on our mailbox, and I
Diamonds
think
are
it may be
missing.
a leftover board from the old railing. But anyway, but when I started looking at her railing, you know, everyone wants to go out to Lowe's and Home Depot, and they just want to buy all the crap that's out there. And you know, if you want to put up a deck rail on your deck, that's great. A deck should look like a deck. Your front porch should not look like a playpen. And that's what happens when you put a deck rail on a front porch. So I was looking at,
I have a nice rail.
she does have a nice rail, and it looks very complicated, but when you really look at it, it's not. It's a number of pieces and parts that if you go onto like Marshall Lumber's website and look through their molding catalog, you can find every single piece in it. You can go and buy it. It's just put together in such a way that it looks complicated. And I was thinking when we build our porch rail, it might be nice to do a tutorial to talk about how to break it down, because we talk so much about how the details of these buildings are so important when people come to the Architectural Review Board. If you learn to think about how to look at the different pieces and how can I find that piece, knowing that most of this stuff was made over with leftover material from building your house in the first place, it may help demystify the process a little bit, to where if you can get the same materials you get at Lowe's or Home Depot and put it together with the same tools, then there's no reason you couldn't duplicate things like that. But I'm kind of crafty that way. But anyway, I'm not sure the best way to present that. And you know, I've talked to the folks at Marshall about some things, and I think that if there was a way that if they might sponsor something, or if I could just do a PowerPoint with pictures. I just don't know the best way to break it down, because I do not want to be on YouTube any more than these meetings are on YouTube.
I think that's almost part of a scale talk too. You know, people put little weenie rails on, you know, and keeping within, you know, to replace when it's not the same scale. Mm-hmm. So, you know, a 2x2 is not a 2x2 anymore, that kind of thing.
Right,
so
and that's part of it.
And then maybe even something in wood types, 2 types of, you know, because my house is mainly cypress, and the older houses have the more quality wood which you could still get.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think wood types is something to discuss too.
But I went back when I was looking for the application to send to the committee. I was looking back at some of the old photos, and I think it was the first year. The house we did the renovation award for, the porch railing was absolutely wrong. Absolutely. It had brick plinths, and that railing came up over the top of it, and that was the wrong scale for
too high.
that porch. It should have been tucked in underneath that concrete plinth, and it wasn't. It was too tall for the porch. So I'm thinking out loud. I'm not sure how to put something like that together, but if you have any ideas of how we could use my experimentation in building porch rails into an educational type thing, let me know. You have an idea? Mr. Podcast?
Oh, it's half-baked.
That's fine.
Well, one, I mean, this is the most obvious, but we need to put that on the agenda at some point whenever you want to do it. That's one
Yeah.
step
Should
to
go
take.
program there.
Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it would be good for us to start, and we're doing that with the class, to start offering, you know, as we can, some things like this. And then people can show up if they want to. If they don't, they don't. I mean, I'll be there.
But I just need to teach people how to build my porch rail for me is what I
And to get
need.
it through the neighborhood associations too,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I mean, you know.
Well, there's a lot of things, and we've talked a lot about brick work, matching brick work, proper, what do you call it when you replace?
We could do
Replace
how to
repointing.
rehang a sash weight. I mean, simple
Right.
stuff.
Right.
You don't want to raise your window because it keeps falling because the ropes are broken. Well, how do you fix that? Or I'm looking at using some of those, what are they called, spring weights, For some windows we had shortened that I don't have access to the pockets anymore, and I don't need access to the pockets, so I can actually raise those without propping them up. So there might be, but I just don't know the best way to do it. Can you do it with just photographs and labels? Do you need to video it and have me cussing through the video that has to be bleeped all the time because that's how I work? Well, I don't know what the best
Creative frustration?
I don't
Well,
know
I
what
mean,
the
since you're
best
the-
presentation method might be.
Since your house is the living laboratory, how do you want to do it? What makes you most comfortable?
It's probably going to be putting pictures together and labels and talk to point at things, what you're talking about,
Circles and arrows.
When I'm talking about, the base of her railing, it's got a slanted piece with a stop. It's just a wide piece of drip cap. It's just used in a different way. I think just kind of to start introducing that vocabulary of the pieces and
Right.
parts.
Giving things a name.
Yeah.
I think is what we've been talking about, terminology with architect Colin. It's that slanty thing is up on your roof. I think that's going to be a really big part of this institute is giving people the tools, the vocabulary to call what the parts of their houses are.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other comment regarding our 2019 awards? Okay. Let me just say, we have two ladies in the audience this afternoon. Would you like to approach the podium and make a couple of comments or anything, either one of you? Can you approach the podium? Just take your time, ma'am. I noticed you're walking with the stick. Yeah, just take your time. And while she's coming to the podium, let me just say how much we appreciate Ms. Carol King and Dr. Dallas Hansberry coming out and help us with a tribute to Ms. Mary Ann Neely at First Baptist Church this past October. And I've had a bunch of positive comments regarding that. And just want to remind everybody that that program will be aired on the city's channel television station this month. And also, while I'm speaking in that regard, just want to say to Dr. Hansberry how much we appreciate your giving a speech at the Montgomery County Historical Society. And would you just want to make a brief comment regarding that presentation?
Yeah, so I guess that was last Sunday?
Yes.
Yeah, last Sunday I just made had a brief talk at the Montgomery County Historical Society's meeting. We just talked basically about the Montgomery County Archives and some of the records that we have available there for family research.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Ma'am?
My name is Dorothy Roberts. Good evening. I'm
Good
a
evening.
member of the Ridgecrest Southern Meadows neighborhood, and I'm out trying to learn the different aspects of our city operations and part of the bonds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Before you leave, if anyone has a question or a comment you'd like to make, Ms. Robinson?
Roberts,
Roberts. You remember the Ridgecrest?
Southern Meadows neighborhood.
Okay, Ridgecrest Southern Meadows neighborhood. All right.
I went to the Bonds annual gathering of the neighborhoods for the mayor's speech. Of course, he was out of town. That was a lovely evening, representing communities all over the city. My wife and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Look forward to attending the next one.
Yeah, every year, annually,
About the same time?
about the same.
About the same time.
I'm trying to remember when it was. It was cold and the night
In
was long.
In February.
February, okay.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for coming out, and always feel free to come to this meeting. We meet the second Tuesday at 5:30 in the City Hall chambers, and you're welcome to come.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Chris, is there anything else before we leave? All right.
Dr. Bailey,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to add, this month is Renovators Open House by Landmarks. It will be on the 29th, which is the fourth Thursday, so it'll be the Thursday after Thanksgiving. It's going to be back in Old Cloverdale at 728 Felder Avenue, 5:30 to 7 o'clock. It is Dr. Richardson and his wife, are redoing that particular house, and it's slated to be finished very soon afterwards.
Okay. Does anyone else have an announcement or something you just like to make certain that we are aware of that's coming up? Any kind of event that's coming up you want to make certain this body is aware of? Okay. That being said, hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving next week. This meeting's hereby adjourned.